So as you know, we're late now in the day, they thought we might as well end with a light topic. So I want to talk with you about climate change and the future of the planet. We do live in a time of planetary crisis. And while that is tragic and will involve tragedy for many people, it's not entirely tragic. And it's not just about tragedy. It's also about opportunity and change. And that planetary crisis that we face is going to change the nature of the work that everyone in this room does. One of the most telling parts of that is that we know that we've already changed the climate. We've raised the climate by about 1 degree, the temperature of the Earth by about 1 degree. And we know that we're going to go on changing the climate just because of the inertia in our system. But often when we think about this, what we think about is the idea that the world will be like it is now, but just a little bit different, a little hotter, until maybe the apocalypse, right? Sort of gray, fuzzy zone between a little bit hotter right now and the apocalypse. But that's not actually what's happening. As the climate is changing, it's becoming a different kind of climate. And the main way that we can understand that climate is to say that it's becoming weirder. And the hotter it gets, the more systems around us are going to be subject to massive pressures, right? The more things around us are going to be at risk of loss and damage. And in order to meet that risk, we're going to need to ruggedize, right? Ruggedization is a term from the military, and it basically means to build something such that it is resistant to collapse. So our idea of what pace of change is possible is already being undermined and transformed. A great example of this is in our solutions, where not that long ago, right, even just 10 or 15 years ago, talking about using clean energy was idealistic, right? It was something that we could do well in a very narrow set of circumstances, but that really where we were doing it outside of that was because we wanted to be part of a change. Well, clean energy and all sorts of other sustainable technologies are on fierce learning curves, right? The more that we deploy, the better they get, the cheaper they get. To the extent that as we deploy double the amount, the cost often drops, right? In solar energy right now, it's about 27%. So when we deploy twice as much solar energy as we have now, it'll cost that much less. And those systems are themselves embedded in choices about the cities we're building that are changing fast in turn. So one of the strongest proven findings, of course, in urban planning is that the denser a community is, the lower its transportation emissions. So you can have a city like Atlanta on the one hand, and a city like Barcelona on the other hand, and they have the same population, but Barcelona literally uses 1/10 less energy, produces 1/10 less emissions. Now, a lot of this comes down to a debate that I'm sure many people in this room are familiar with, which is this question of, do we provide access to the things that we want and desire through mobility or through proximity, right? Is it better to live near the thing you want or to be able to drive there easily? Might be one way to think about it. Where even buildings are largely services, as we see by Airbnb and co-working, right? There's this transformation of the relationship of people to service to space. And this creates changes that weren't possible before. So one of the trends that's going on, most cities have enormous areas of land devoted to streets and parking. What we have then are disruptive solutions and a demand for speed, right? Because the problems we face are serious and we need to act on them quickly. But those two things are being multiplied by a third force, which is the scale of need. And it's hard to understand the scale of what's happening now unless we really think about what's going on with cities. So I trust that it's not news to anyone that we are in the middle of a very long urbanization boom, right? More and more people moving to cities. It's sometimes hard to grasp how many people are moving to cities or being born there. But to give you a sense of the scope, We're building an area of city roughly the size of the entire Munich metro area every 10 days. And then we're doing it again, and doing it again, and doing it again. I would say that for a room like this, one of the ways to focus on that question is simply to ask, how might sustainable mobility become the fulcrum point for rapid uptake of carbon zero urban systems, right? How could sustainable mobility become the way that these changes unfold, right? I think a lot depends on that answer. And I would encourage you to think about Buckminster Fuller, the designer from the last century, who wrote, "You never change anything by challenging what is. You change things by making a new thing that makes the old thing obsolete." And that's going to affect the work of everybody in this room and hopefully lead to a much better future. Thank you very much.